This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
We're flying, we're riding, and we're driving. All excited to be arriving.
It's family. That's what makes it worth it, family being together.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Webster. The day before Thanksgiving, and America is on the move.
You do what you have to do to make it happen. I'm going to make it happen to go see the family.
By and large, so far, so good at America's airports.
I feel like it hasn't gotten really busy yet.
I expected to see a whole bunch of lines, but I'm very pleasantly surprised.
The flying public, of course, has to spend time preparing for this week's travel rush, and so do those who keep all those planes moving. And it's not just the traffic inside airport terminals.
The FAA is opening additional express lanes in the sky, usually reserved for the military, along the east and Gulf coasts to help keep pace with the surge in holiday flights.
AAA says 5 million Americans will fly this week. TSA expects to screen nearly 3 million of those travelers today. Meantime, an estimated 72 million Americans have, or soon will, hit the road. That's a record. Over the river and through the woods to Grandma's house can be a long haul for many.
It took me 4 hours to get here, where normally it's 3, and I think it's going to be probably 7 hours home.
This family tried to beat the rush a bit by leaving on Tuesday.
We usually leave on Wednesdays, and we realized that it's a lot more busier, so we decided to leave on a Tuesday and kind of see how that handles out.
Now, the good news, nationwide gas prices are about 19 cents a gallon cheaper than they were at this time last year. Of course, weather can make or break many a flight or car trip, and for most of us, we're in for some slop.
Some messy weather overnight tonight and tomorrow. Not a big storm, but it will bring us wet snow and rain. And in its wake, the floodgates for Arctic air will open, and lake-effect snows will fly in the snow belts Friday through the weekend.
That's meteorologist Kevin Williams tracking all of that. His forecast for your area is just ahead. Elsewhere this day, in the Middle East, all quiet on the northern or southern front. Last night, a ceasefire took effect between Israel and the Iran-backed terror group Hezbollah in Lebanon. CBS's Deborah Pata.
In the early hours of this morning, the guns fell silent. Now the tense 60-day wait to see if this holds.
It's welcomed by many after more than a year of deadly fighting, but the deal leaves this Israeli man, among others, with some questions.
Why, when Hezbollah in Lebanon, still with most of his force left, threatening in Israel, we can reach an agreement, but in Gaza, when we have 101 hostages and Hamas is almost finished, we cannot reach an agreement.
The BBC's Hugo Bachega is with the Lebanese side.
Thousands of people have started the journey down south, and there is a massive traffic jam here with families trying to go back to towns and villages in the south of the country.
Despite concerns by some, President Biden says the deal in no way leaves Israel vulnerable.
If Hezbollah or anyone else breaks the deal and poses a direct threat to Israel, then Israel retains the right to self-defense, consistent with international law.
Israeli airstrikes and Hezbollah rocket attacks continued right up until that ceasefire began. President-elect Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, visited the Tex-Mex border yesterday, saying they plan to keep Trump's campaign promise of mass deportations of illegal immigrants, especially criminals.
The nation wants a safe country. We've had enough crime in this country, illegal alien crime. It's time to end it and stop it.
Homan's a former acting director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Now, you might think of shoplifting as a small-scale individual crime, but more often these days, it's the work of large-scale shoplifting rings. New York just busted one, accused of stealing $2 million worth of clothing, makeup, and perfume over a 2-year period, says Governor Kathy Hochul.
We're not taking this anymore. There's more of us than you. We're going to make sure we have the resources to do everything at our disposal to shut you down once and for all.
Police say that 5-person ring dealt in stolen high-end brands and then resold them abroad. You have kids who spend hours on social media. Australian lawmakers just passed a bill making those platforms off limits to youths under age 16. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
We're doing more than setting a new minimum age of 16 for social media. We are setting a new community standard, making it clear that social media companies have a social responsibility.
It would make platforms like TikTok, Facebook, and X liable for tens of millions of dollars in fines if they violate those rules. However, Australia's Senate still needs to give final approval. Social media can contribute to a feeling of loneliness. About 10% of the U.S. population feels lonely. 5% of us have a physiological case of seasonal affective disorder during the wintertime. Christian author Mark Mayfield says the holiday season's a good time for people to initiate a helpful outreach to a pastoral counselor, therapist, or life coach.
It really creates almost a breakaway feeling of freedom to know that somebody else is there and understands you, but also that God is there and is walking with you.
Mayfield developed a workbook on dealing with loneliness for the American Association of Christian Counselors. He tells Family Life that people who have difficulties connecting with close relatives can create what he calls a family of friends who can add a sense of comfort and belonging. We feature an extended interview with the curriculum developer for that Association of Christian Counselors during the Family Life Noon Report on Friday, or you can catch it over the weekend in the FamilyLife.org news podcast section. Still to come on the Noon Report, parts of the listing area bracing for some weekend lake effect snow. And we'll also have an interview with a pastor whose church stepped up to help amid the damage done by Hurricane Helene.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams, tracking your Thanksgiving Day weather. Right now, I would suggest dressing for foul weather. We'll have forecast details coming up.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin. Now checking the stories making news where you live in New York and Pennsylvania. Part of Thanksgiving week is keeping a close eye on how weather might impact travel plans. For most of the listing area, nothing major for Thanksgiving Day itself, though WNEP's Joe Snedeker says in the Scranton area, it's all about altitude.
There's going to be a prolonged period of continuous snow tonight while you sleep. Poconos, if you're up above 13, 14, 1,500 feet in northern Tier counties west, you could pick up 1, 2, 3, 4 inches of snow.
Meantime, after Thanksgiving, we're talking feet, not inches, of snow along parts of the Great Lakes. Winter storm watches already posted for counties east and southeast of Lakes Erie and Ontario as a blast of Arctic air fuels some long-lasting lake snow from Friday to Monday. WIVB meteorologist Mike Doyle says it'll start Friday morning, then get more intense as the weekend rolls in.
By the end of our day Friday, that's when we'll start to see more of this heavier lake effect snow become a bit more organized. We're still talking mainly the higher elevations in Chautauqua County, the Boston Hills, now towards the Wyoming Hills as well, where we can start to see more of the heavier snow.
And again, our meteorologist Kevin Williams is on top of all of that. He'll have the updated forecast later in this newscast. Plenty of people traveling to and from New York and PA this weekend, of course. Well, driving or flying, the old adage holds true. Pack your patience.
Thanksgiving is the busiest 7 consecutive days of the year for us and for airports across the country.
That's Andy Moore. He's director of Rochester's Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport. He tells WHEC for them it's all about the prep.
We prepare for this weeks in advance. I meet with all the airlines, our concessionaires, our airfield staff, our custodial staff, the car rental. So it's all about planning and making sure everybody's where they need to be and the staffing levels are what they need to be.
Now, if you happen to fly in or out of the Syracuse airport, you might be treated to the sounds of the season. Live organ music played by Gloria Roberts, one of the few folks who's actually grateful for a crowded airport. Gives her a bigger audience for her soothing sounds.
I have so many Christmas songs to play, you know, the religious ones, the playful ones, and it's fun. I just feel very blessed to be here.
Not many people in an airport this week will be saying that. Well, speaking of being blessed, oftentimes the biggest blessings spring from life's biggest challenges. It's been 2 months now since Hurricane Helene swept through hundreds of towns in the South. In North Carolina alone, 220,000 homes destroyed, more than 6,000 bridges. The Family Life News team had the chance to get the story of a small church making a big difference in western North Carolina during this Thanksgiving week.
I'm Family Life News anchor Sarah Harnish, and with me is Jeremy Fine, who's serving the community in Swannanoa, North Carolina with Generation Church, where his dad is the pastor. Hey there, Jeremy.
Hey, how's it going, Sarah?
It's Thanksgiving week, and you guys just had your first snowfall. People are in tents instead of houses. This is really hard. Can you crunch some numbers with me and tell me what you are doing 2 months out from the devastation of Hurricane Helene?
Yeah, absolutely. So
we're working on a lot of rebuilding people's homes, getting individuals in campers and even tiny homes or sheds. We have over 45 families that we've been able to get into campers. We've been doing 50 to 60 different missions each day. We're actually going out to people's houses, mucking them out or putting in drywall, fixing up the houses. And so we've been doing that on a daily basis. We have served over 55,000 meals to the community. And on a daily basis, we have over 300 or 500 families come through for shopping and supplies at our distribution site. And we've given out over 1,000 generators and well over 2,000 heaters.
That's crazy. How big is your church?
Less than 100 people.
Wow. So this is donations that are coming in from other churches, relief organizations, volunteers, and then you guys are acting as a distribution center in Swannanoa in that area?
Correct. Yeah. So it came out of nowhere. We originally were just like, let's get some food on some plates for people. So we were thinking it would just be hot food. And then it became hot food, supplies distribution, rebuilds, rehabs. It's become quite the operation, but it's been through just the community and church coming together. I mean, we've had people all the way from Washington State drive down to volunteer and bring supplies, and just incredible to see the body of Christ coming together and the community come together to serve these people, to serve those that have lost their homes, or if they haven't lost their homes, there's still houses that are without power 2 months after all of this happened. Water is basically restored, but there's still houses that the water comes out of the faucet brown and yellow. So there's really people that are severely impacted, and we get to be here as agents and vessels of hope.
That's crazy. And I know we've seen Swannanoa in the news, but up in New York and Pennsylvania, some of us are like, is it as bad as the news says? I mean, what level of devastation do you think that your town had? Is it a river went through Main Street and we've got a couple of streets gone kind of a thing, or is it most of the town was swept away?
It is much worse than what the news is showing. Much, much worse than what is actually being shown. I mean, it's been whole towns. My grandparents, they lived in Chimney Rock, North Carolina, and so I grew up in that area. I mean, the whole town of Chimney Rock essentially is just gone. And then same with Swannanoa. I mean, its buildings completely destroyed and washed away. And it's not just those two areas. I mean, it's Spruce Pine. The River Arts District in Asheville got completely destroyed. Biltmore Village, which Biltmore Village was a very nice shopping center area, a lot of great hotels, restaurants, and I mean, that was 20 feet underwater. And so there's so much devastation, it's insurmountable.
We're hearing that most of the work on the ground is Christian relief organizations and churches just like yours, these little 100-person churches, groups like Samaritan Ministries, 8 Days of Hope. You're right in the middle of it in one of the hardest towns that was hit. Is that what you're seeing too?
Yeah, I'm seeing the church coming together. There's definitely been the community as well. I mean, the people of Asheville have come together. I mean, there's another relief about 10 miles down the road from us that was just started by a woman who was like, I want to serve this community. And she partnered with a local grocery called Ingles, and she's operating a distribution center out of their garden center. And so, yeah, the church has truly come together, but also the people of this city want to help and serve. And how there's been a connection of individuals who have had nothing to do with the church aligning with the church. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I've seen, is that Asheville is a very divided city in terms of there can be tension at times between different groups, but it really does seem and feel like a lot of that tension per se has gone down into where people that would never step in a church are partnering with churches to help individuals, and it's really a beautiful thing to see.
How have you seen Jesus work Thanksgiving week in Swannanoa, North Carolina?
On Thursday, we're going to be opening up for Thanksgiving meals, and we're planning to do over 2,000 meals for the community. And it's been cold, it's been rainy, and I just know so many individuals and how God is just bringing hope to this area through the church. And really, we've had just so many encounters of individuals that have said, like, we wanted nothing to do with the church, but now this is where we need to be, we want to be, and we're so grateful for what you're doing. So God is moving in this area, and I'm really excited to see what comes next.
What's been your favorite Helene story out of this whole experience?
There's a lot of really big, cool things that have happened. one that comes to mind is my dad had just let me know we had completely run out of bread. We had no bread, and we were like, all right, well, we will figure it out. And then next thing I know, a semi-truck pulls up and says, hey, I have a whole semi full of bread. And we're like, yes. Not even 10 minutes later, or us just literally saying, oh, we need this. And then somebody comes and brings that exact thing, and we didn't tell anybody we needed it yet. It just showed up after we said we need it. And that's happened, I mean, a dozen times or more. And it's just been incredible how God is providing in that area. But then also they have just said, like, we would not have been able to get through this storm if it weren't for y'all and your heart on just loving this community. And so it's been a beautiful thing to see everybody come together.
What do you want the person listening to the radio in New York and Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles away, to know about Jesus Christ when they're in a flood in their own life?
Well, I'd want them to know that He truly will provide for you, and there is hope in those floods, and to know that He is there, but also like He will show up in His own way. It may not be how you expect it, but He will show up for you. He is there for you. You just have to be willing to receive what He has for you.
Amazing tales from Jeremy Fine with Generation Church in Swannanoa, North Carolina, a small church of just 100 people serving 55,000 meals in the 8 weeks since Hurricane Helene hit, making a difference to those who lost everything during this Thanksgiving week. Alrighty, that brings us to a check of sports. Here's Randy.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Mark, it was a big night for Victor Wembanyama as he poured in 34 points to lead the Spurs to their fourth straight win. A 128-115 victory over the Jazz. Wembanyama 7-9 from two-point range and 6 of 14 on his threes. In Phoenix, both Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal scored 23 points in their returns from calf injuries as the Suns torched the Lakers 127-100. Durant had missed the last 7 games, Beal the last 5. Devin Booker led the team. He had 26 points and handed out 10 helpers, and the win snaps a 5-game losing streak for Phoenix. It was almost a disastrous night for the Houston Rockets. They blew an 18-point lead late in the third quarter and had to go in overtime to finally beat the T-Wolves 117-111. Fred VanVleet had 27 points and 11 assists, and Alperen Sengun had a triple-double, 22 points, 11 assists, and 10 rebounds. The Bulls beat the Wizards 127-108, and it was Milwaukee over Miami 106-103. Just 2 games on the ice saw the Canucks shut out the Bruins 2-0. Utah edged the Canadiens in overtime 3-2. Baseball news. The defending champs just got better. The Los Angeles Dodgers have added 2-time Cy Young Award winner Blake Snell to their pitching staff. Snell signed a 5-year contract with Los Angeles. And in football, Aaron Rodgers has yet to make a decision about playing next season, but if he does play, he says he wants to play for the New York Jets. That is a look at sports.
All right, thank you very much, Randy. Still to come on the Noon Report, we'll recap the top stories of this day before Thanksgiving, and we'll hear from Martha Manikas-Foster. She speaks with experts on how to combat a seasonal rise in domestic violence cases.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. Recently, a Florida-based cruise line announced a 4-year journey with stops in 140 countries. It was marketed to those who were hoping to avoid the United States during President Trump's second term in office. Even more dramatic have been those women shaving their heads on social media while swearing to celibacy in order to protest the patriarchy. But I think the most troubling post-election overreaction is a trend that seems to have now become a new American holiday tradition. Canceling Thanksgiving and Christmas celebrations with loved ones, choosing politics over our most important relationships. This may be the most damning evidence yet that America is indeed plagued by what might be called the political illusion. Now, at least part of this trend is just how consequential our elections have indeed become. All elections have consequences, of course, but we're putting a cultural weight on politics that it simply cannot bear. When essential truths about life and the human person and our most essential relationships are put to a vote, Well, that means that the rest of society, especially the family and the church, have largely failed to fulfill their roles, the roles for which God created them. Even so, Christians especially should fight to stay in important relationships. Paul instructed Christians to strive to live at peace with as much as lies within us. However, this does not mean that we should just remain silent or avoid hard conversations. In fact, with Thanksgiving tomorrow, we might find ourselves in tense conversations over hot topics with people we may not like but are called to love. So how do we do this in a way that creates more light than it does heat? Well, first, it's essential to discern which discussions are worthwhile and which are just likely to generate more conflict and stress. Second, it's important to remember that a soft answer really does turn away wrath, like the Bible says. So here are 6 questions that I found helpful to keep in mind. First, what do you mean by that? It's vital in any conversation to define the terms that are being used. And often, when it comes to the most crucial issues of our culture, we're using the same vocabulary as those with whom we disagree, but we're not using the same dictionary. Second, how do you know that's true? You see, assertions are not the same as arguments. An assertion is a definitive statement made about the nature of reality, but an argument is what's presented to back up an assertion. By asking, how do you know that's true, the conversation can move past just competing assertions to why an assertion should be taken seriously. Third, where do you get this information? Whenever an argument is in fact offered, it's important to ensure that the argument is valid. This is especially important in a culture like ours, with our digital echo chambers, competing news sources, and so-called alternative facts. Fourth, how did you come to this conclusion? Look, everyone has a story. And knowing someone's story can explain why he or she just cannot understand your views or just cannot find your views plausible. The final 2 questions are, what if you're wrong and what if you're right? Ideas have consequences. Bad ideas have victims. These questions move someone's ideas or views from the theoretical to their logical conclusions. I hope these questions can help you have a productive and helpful conversation. But still, remember, the very best question to ask tomorrow and to answer is, what are you thankful for? Because offering thanks is a great way to talk about God. For the Colson Center, happy Thanksgiving. As I gather tomorrow with friends and family, I'm going to be giving thanks for all of you, the listeners and supporters of Breakpoint. Today's Breakpoint was co-authored by Dr. Glenn Sunshine. If you're a fan of Breakpoint, leave us a review wherever you download your podcast. And for more resources to live like a Christian, please visit us at breakpoint.org.
Alrighty, thank you. Now let's check in with meteorologist Kevin Williams.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast for this afternoon. Clouds and some sun. High temperatures, low to mid-40s. Cloudy for tonight and Thanksgiving Day. Light rain and wet snow will arrive and continue tomorrow. A few inches can be expected over the highest elevations. Little to no accumulation near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Low tonight 30s, the high tomorrow 30s and low 40s. On Friday, clouds and sunshine with heavy lake snow south and southeast of Buffalo. High temps 30s to near 40s.
All right, thank you much, Kevin. This is the Noon Report on Family Life. I'm Mark Webster. Thank you again for joining us. Here's a quick recap of some of our top stories today. The Thanksgiving travel rush hitting high gear right now. Millions of Americans driving or flying to get to family gatherings. The travel can be tough, but this woman speaks for many.
It's family. Just thankful to have them all together and have that dinner. That's what makes it worth it, family being together.
This flyer's just happy to not be driving.
It beats driving the 12 hours with 3 kids in the car.
I hear that. Weather could be a factor for some drivers and flyers, especially in our half of the country.
Travel is definitely going to be challenging. It will be hampered by rain and or snow and possibly some severe weather in the south, covering 80 to 90% of the eastern half of the nation.
Meteorologist Craig Allen. Well, traffic's also bumper to bumper in northern Israel and southern Lebanon, hours after a ceasefire took place between Israel and Iran-backed terror group Hezbollah.
During this period, Israel must withdraw from Lebanon and Hezbollah retreat north of the Litani River, while Lebanese troops and UN forces keep the peace.
CBS's Deborah Pata. Not all Israelis are welcoming this deal.
Probably the best would have been for both to be stopped at the very same time.
I think it makes Israel look a bit weak.
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
Israel achieved its military objectives. Hezbollah, the terrorist group, has been badly degraded. And it means the tens of thousands of Israeli citizens and hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians will be able to return to their home. And it's designed to be a permanent end to this war.
You're listening to the Noon Report on Family Life.
The Perry Como Classic, There's No Place Like Home for the Holidays, has an ominous ring for families in violent households, where every year there's a spike in reports of domestic violence. I'm Martha Manikas Foster, and this is Family Life's Inside Out, where we look at how God transforms his people from the inside out. Today we'll be talking about that uptick in domestic violence during the holidays, and how, if your friend's in danger, you can offer hope, and how, if you're the one in danger, you can find help. Because for some people, this is a dangerous time of year.
Well, the holidays can often bring additional stress, whether it's financial pressures, family conflicts, or heightened expectations, and that can exacerbate tensions in households where domestic violence is already present.
Scott D. Brucker works with Erie County, Pennsylvania's Safe Journey as the development coordinator. Safe Journey has been serving victims of domestic violence since 1978. It offers a shelter, counseling, and other services for those caught in domestic partner abuse.
For those who live with an abusive partner, the stress and isolation of the holiday season can make them feel more trapped. Abusers may feel more in control or emboldened, and victims may feel less able to reach out for help.
And the impact of that violence echoes down the years for everyone in the household.
When victims of intimate partner abuse and their children don't get help, the impact can have profound and long-lasting effects. Research has shown that children who witness or experience domestic violence often endure what are called adverse childhood experiences. These traumatic events can affect a child's brain development, emotional health, and even physical well-being throughout their life. For victims, the trauma of abuse can create depression, low self-esteem, PTSD. Most importantly, abuse generally escalates over time, and that leads to an increased likelihood of severe injury or death. That's why it's so important to connect them with support and resources as early as possible.
Deb Keener sees the impact of violence in the home every day as she works with women who've been trafficked for sex. Keener's the founder and executive director of the Potter's Hands Foundation, the Western New York nonprofit that's been serving survivors of sexual exploitation now for 11 years.
The majority of the women that we serve have experienced violence in their homes from a very young age. They believe it's normal for families to function that way. When I was facilitating a group with the women in our home, we were discussing what a dysfunctional family looks like. And one of the questions I asked is, how many of you could remember a time when you felt safe in your homes? And honestly, not one of them could remember a single time where they felt safe at home. So when they enter relationships, they don't know that that kind of treatment isn't the norm. And so they end up in these abusive relationships where they expect that behavior from their partners because that's all they know.
With domestic violence escalating this time of year, people who are safe can look for ways to help their friends who are not.
Being a friend to someone in a dangerous situation means offering support without judgment. It's important to listen and believe them.
Keener agrees.
It's important for us to validate victims, make sure they know that when they do open up, we're hearing them, we're listening to them, we tell them that we believe them. It's not their fault. They don't deserve it. Make sure that you can find a way to just be available to them. And I would say even help them form a safety plan. Make sure that they have a safe place to go. Sometimes that's easier to say to a friend, like, hey, you may not be ready to go now, but let's put a plan in place just in case you need to get out of there.
Encourage them to reach out to local resources, but understand that leaving an abusive situation is often a long and difficult process. Be patient. Remind them that you're there for them when they're ready. Offering emotional support and practical help, like providing information or connecting them with services, can make a real difference.
Maybe even packing a bag with the important documents and money and things that they would need. Maybe a code word that they can use when they need you to call the police for them. Emergency contacts, things like that.
You can provide a steady presence and a ready ear if they want to talk or ask for help.
The most important thing is to make time for them, help them to know that you are there no matter what. And I think learning the warning signs, obviously there are physical signs, black eyes, bruising on their arms, but there's also emotional signs. If you see a change in their behavior, their sleeping, eating patterns, they start using drugs or alcohol more than they ever have or for the first time, they become withdrawn or distant, they stop showing up for things, they have extreme privacy concerning their personal life all of a sudden.
Friends of people who are being abused can familiarize themselves with available domestic violence services so that they're ready to help. If you are the victim of abuse, Scott D. Brucker counsels you to connect with people trained to help.
Make a phone call. For direct help, anyone can contact our 24-hour confidential hotline at 814-438-2675, where trained advocates are ready to provide support and resources whenever they're needed. Go to us online at www.mysafejourney.org.
DeBrucker notes that even people outside of Erie County, Pennsylvania, can call the Safe Journey hotline. You can also call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That's 24/7 at 800-799-7233. Or text the word BEGIN, BEGIN, to 88788. You can connect with Safe Journey at mysafejourney.org. You can connect with the Potter's Hands Foundation at thepottershandsfoundation.org.
All right, thank you, Martha. To be safe from an abuser when contacting domestic violence services, experts say to make certain you're alone or can click off of a website quickly. Inside Out with Martha Manikas Foster airs Wednesdays during the Noon Report or online anytime at familylife.org. Just ahead, quite a find at an old lighthouse.
My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. We're looking at an area of low pressure heading eastbound from the Midwest. It is going to generate some messy weather overnight tonight and tomorrow. Not a big storm, but it will bring us wet snow and rain. And in its wake, the floodgates for Arctic air will open and lake effect snows will fly in the snow belts Friday through the weekend. For this afternoon, clouds and some sun. High temperatures, low to mid-40s. Cloudy for tonight and Thanksgiving Day. Light rain and wet snow will arrive from southwest to northeast tonight and continue tomorrow. Snow accumulations of a few inches can be expected over the highest elevations of the southern Finger Lakes into the eastern Twin Tiers. Little to no accumulation near Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. Low tonight 30s, the high tomorrow 30s and low 40s. On Friday, a mix of clouds and sunshine with heavy lake snow south and southeast of Buffalo. High temps 30s to near 40.
All right, thank you very much, Kevin Williams. Finally at noon, it was a routine inspection at Scotland's 209-year-old Corsewall Lighthouse when the crew found something special behind some wood panels, a 132-year-old message in a bottle. Inside, a note dated September 4th, 1892, bearing the names of 3 engineers who'd installed a light at the top of the 100-foot-tall lighthouse, as well as the names of 3 lighthouse keepers from that era.
It was like the guys that wrote it were here with us. It was like that. We could feel them.
To have that absolute connection and see their handwriting and think what possessed them to put it in a bottle and put it under the floorboard. It's fantastic.
Yeah, one of the finders joked that they swore each other to secrecy if the note inside turned out to be a treasure map. It didn't. Still, it was a historical treasure in its own right, and the inspection crew put the bottle back into its hiding place along with a message of their own. And that's the world we live in for Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. As always, we thank you for listening. Have a blessed Thanksgiving. I'm Mark Webster, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.